I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces and also new faces, or let's say new names. Very warm welcome to our second webinar this year. SIETAR Europa and Joanna Zell from virtual team are very, very glad to greet you and to introduce a very interesting theme proposed by our speaker, Agnieszka Ches. Agnieszka Ches is a PhD doctor in marketing, or let's say, better say, management. And she also graduated from the university in Spanish culture. Nevertheless, driven by curiosity, she decided to go for 3 years to Oman and conducted her PhD research over there. So you can see the cross-cultural studies and their business applications focus on the Arab world. And I'm really happy to see people from Poland, Agnieszka, from the US, from the Netherlands, from France, from Ireland, from Greece, Great Britain, and many, many more, Belgium. And people are joining. So the discussion, which is going to take place afterwards, is going to be very, very interesting, because as you see, there are going to be also questions and inspirations from people from around the world. And at this point, I would like to thank all of you who are dealing with the time zone issues. For some of us, it's the evening. For some of us who are joining from overseas, it's already much, much later, or from the US, much earlier. So good morning and dzień dobry. Agnieszka, I'm handing over to you, and I'm really, really curious about your research, your input. Just maybe a short story, short input. As we talked to each other, we said that it's really tricky to talk about the cultural circle regarding the Arab culture. Yeah, this is something that people tend to generalize. Nevertheless, when we think of Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and for instance, Oman, these are countries which are very, very different. And with this thought, I would like to hand over to you, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much for this lovely introduction. Good evening, dobry wieczór. I could say also in Arabic, although I have really bad accent, salam alaikum. I am very happy to have this opportunity to share a bit of my research, a bit of my personal experience in this webinar. I am welcoming you with some symbolic cup of coffee. It couldn't be different, as it is always a sign of hospitality in the Arab world. Why this topic? You already know that it results from my stay in the Arab world, and it also results from my struggles before I dedicated my time to studying the Arab customers and their behavior, mostly on social media. I studied Spanish culture and also other cultures, but Arab culture proved to be really like a experience that I learned many times hard way about this culture and cultural differences. So it will be a bit of my research, a bit of also my stories, how I was trying to prepare for the 3-year stay and work time there, and also there is I think it's a big importance in my point of view and in my perspective. The fact that I am from Poland. I believe most of you have heard that Poland is among the most homogeneous countries in Europe and maybe even in the world when it comes to ethnicity. And this makes many Polish people to have more challenges maybe than other nations with understanding, grasping cultural differences. And I believe I see it can be sometimes my experience, but also the experience of people who I meet when I am in the role of a trainer or academic teacher. So just a brief question, just a small check-in. What are your needs for this webinar? What are your goals? What brings you here? And maybe somehow I will be able to address them in a special way.
So at this moment, we can share all the needs and goals in the chat window, please. And whoever is typing, I'm going to read it aloud. So just curious about your experience and takeaways. General interest is highlighted. And then one participant from Saudi Arabia, my field is strictly connected to intercultural training in the Arab world, especially in Saudi Arabia. Then we've got a comment, militarism.
Oh, wow.
Interest in the Arabic culture. We have a lot of contact with the Lebanon. Also compare with other countries in the region, learning Arabic, curiosity to compare with my own experience dealing with Arabs from all the other Arab countries, written correspondence, and in my current job, I often meet people from Arabic culture. Last but not least, cultural values in the Arabic world, negotiations, interested in the Arab world, also interested in Palestine and Israel. Recent clients with engagement in the region, so very hands-on approach, business applications, general, and to the Arab world. Working with immigrants from Arab countries. And Charlotta is writing, I work with the Swedish client and United Arab Emirates, and there are cultural and ethical challenges. Just to learn about the culture, same here. I would like to know more about the commodalities and differences between the Gulf and the others. Intercultural research methods. And Russia is originally from Palestinian Jordanian origin, currently living in the US and working in the field of cultural training. So this is a personal interest as well. Also better ability to connect and understand my students coming from this region, working in international teams, and also, yes, to understand our students with the Arabic background better.
Great, so many. This is a short webinar, so I will not be able to address all of this, but I will definitely share with you also some literature, and I will just briefly mention some books and maybe even some offers which you can refer also. And if I don't address everything, I hope at least I will give you some hints where to search also for information in different sources. So I will talk about kind of like the way I went through myself trying to understand the Arab culture and different frameworks I was approaching and studying, and where I could find information on the Arab states and where there was no information. And also what is the image of the Arab culture in those publications, in those studies, in the research. And also I would like to share with you some questions that I always have on top of my head since the time I had my first hands-on experience with the Arab culture. So since it is all about business applications, I also wanted to ask you just briefly, when you have clients, I believe there are also trainers among us, if you have clients who come for training and they are in business, what are their specific goals? What they want to achieve through the training? If you could just maybe a couple of people, if you would like to share. I have also my list, but I just wonder if it overlaps.
Please make sure that you are writing your answers in the chat window to everyone in the room. So not only the discussing people, but really everyone. So, and here we've got the first answers. How to adapt their communication style, build trust in business, understanding protocols to be respectful to the culture, a team with strong intercultural communication skills. So basically intercultural competence training. Then we've got the comments, they want to avoid making stupid mistakes that would negatively affect their relationships there. And hints about the target culture, which mistakes to avoid. And one more very specific comment, they want better cooperation across cultures and somehow balance different value systems. Localization training, understanding what perception business professionals in the region have of other specific cultures, how to sell to Arab tourists with exclamation mark, and also regional differences in Arabic world.
Okay, so some are specific about the Arab world. So
yeah, there is also one more question: how do I find the right business partner in the Arab countries?
Oh yeah, that's actually that's a very important question. There should be some special strategies about it. It may seem like a trivial question, but it's not. I have listed some goals that I hear from my trainees, and I divide them in interpersonal needs, like what most of you have mentioned, I believe. People are moving abroad, or they are leading cross-cultural teams, or they basically just want to strengthen their relations with some customer abroad, so dealing with suppliers abroad, so all searching for business partners, negotiating, all this kind, and they are, as you mentioned, they are very skill focused. They come and say, we want to be situation smart, we want to do best in our professional role. I sometimes hear like a funny statement that I don't want training, I need to find out how I can avoid problems. And this is also what you mentioned just a few seconds ago. And also there is a clear distinction, especially when people approach me, this is my experience, different expectations from the people who have cross-cultural interaction but remain within their native culture, for example in Poland, and it's very different scope of expectations when they need to move and immerse in other cultures. So but there is also like at a different level expectations which are at the operations level. This is how I call it. And then it's not a person or a group wanting some skills. It's an organization that wants not only skills, but also some deeper knowledge, deeper understanding of the country, because there is a merger, because they are offshoring production, because they have a marketing campaign, like how do we sell to Arabs, for example, or they are designing a product for a foreign market. So then it's kind of like a different discussion. It's not that much about skills, it's about some image, deeper understanding. So those are the two let's say, takes that I hear from the clients. How was my experience with learning about the Arab culture and trying to be efficient as head of marketing, as a person in charge of also business development in the Arab world, as a person who was designing creative strategies? First, I actually believed I could just use the skills I already had. And I would be just good enough using my intuition, but it turned out to be a very mistaken assumption. So I started, and I often also do the same, just looking at cultural dimensions, and I was trying to get information. What is the image of the Arab culture there, and how do they describe the Arab culture? So I looked basically from the very beginning to Hall, to Hofstede, to Schwarz, to Trompeners, and I was trying to figure out, okay, so how do we make sense of all those business situations that I was experiencing while in Oman, and also in other countries in the Gulf region. And it is very helpful in the Arab world to understand the notion of high context and low context. It is priceless to understand well the notion of polychronic time, and it's really something like really basic to approach that culture. Although Hall, he didn't really study Arab cultures, but he mentions Arab culture in general as example of, for example, high context culture. Hofstede is, and it will not be surprising to you, provides like the broadest research of Arab states. Like in his approach, in his research, we find the largest number of Arab countries. But as you can see here, unfortunately, for most of them, the scores are estimated. Nevertheless, there is a big consistency over those dimensions, and especially for the Arab Peninsula countries, it is very visible that power distance is among the strongest characteristics of this culture. And also they score very low on individualism, which means they are collective cultures. And it's very interesting when we read explanations. It's not in Hofstede's publications, but by many other authors. Where does it come from, this collectivism? And this is probably also not surprising. Maybe you have heard about so-called typical desert culture, which basically, because of very harsh living conditions, made people really to get used in small collectives and small groups, and completely subdue to the needs of those groups. So this is the reason. This is an explanation for this strong power distance and for strong collectivism. The researchers say that the fact that the Arab Peninsula, the cradle of the Arab culture, because this is where the Arab culture was, we can say, born, it originates from there, those harsh conditions actually influence even people's DNA. It is said there is some research that it is reflected in the DNA. Some of those behaviors characteristics are even in the DNA, and there is research also showing that while the Arabs were conquering in the 12th, 13th, 14th century Mediterranean area, that they basically left there some of their DNA, and this is why we can see strong patriarchal cultures in southern Italy and southern Greece, in the Mediterranean area. But this is just like an interesting interesting comment. But going back to Hofstede, it's also very, very clear that Arab countries don't like ambiguous situations, so uncertainty avoidance is actually also typical for those countries, most of them, and also long-term orientation. Let's say it's not their strength, and I think it's important also at this moment to have a look that there is a big consistency when it comes to countries which are on the Arab Peninsula, but it is more diverse when we look at other Arab countries. And I believe this is one of the questions that already we have asked at the beginning. Like, is it legitimate actually to treat all those countries as just one group? I am mentioning also Schwarz here and Trompenaars, even though Schwarz he didn't really research much the Arab countries. But he is often recalled with Hofstede as the one who can be used for research in marketing, research in customer behavior, or also research in organizational behavior. I believe it is important to remember about him. Probably he never gained popularity because just Hofstede was first, and as they say, it's better to be first than better. I'm just kidding, but it's true that among researchers, like Schwarz model has like very, very high esteem. Trompenaars, he didn't dedicate much research to Arab countries. Egypt is described when it comes to individualism and collectivism, but a very specific aspect, which is aspect of ethics. And he describes some research in which people in Egypt were asked about if they considered to be a wrongdoing if you basically lie about your family members or your in-group members or your tribe members, to protect them, for example, from being sentenced in the court of justice for something. And basically in those highly collective cultures, it was not considered to be wrongdoing, because in those cultures rules can be interpreted depending on to whom they are applied. So not much there, either on the Arab culture. I will show you later like a table which will present which countries were somehow covered by which researcher. So we will have like an overall view. And just wanted to mention briefly that there was a very, very interesting research, an article, The Culture of Your Jungle, which compares different dimensions And if you are interested in those things. And the purpose of that comparison was basically how we can find the best model, or how we can create the best model based on all those that already exist for marketing purposes, for business purposes, for organizational culture analysis. Since probably you have never heard about that model and that article, it means there were good intentions, but it's not easy, and Hofstede always prevails. So I wanted to ask you about which frameworks you like most, but maybe we will talk about it later. I just want
a second, Agnieszka. There is a request. Can we see that list of research books again, please? So if you are,
sure.
Oh
yes,
it's actually one book.
Yes, and in this book there are lots of interesting articles. I can recommend this one in specific. And yeah, definitely the book is also worth reviewing, reading.
Yeah. And there is one more comment, and this is also actually something, Agnieszka, we've been talking about before the webinar, that the problem is that all those models are quite old, and many things have changed really a lot in those countries. Yeah, especially when I think of United Arab Emirates. You know, I had the chance to go twice to Dubai, also to Abu Dhabi. I had also this experience in Oman or Bahrain. These are really completely different countries, you know. So and they are transforming in such a pace that it's really incredible to keep up the speed with.
Yes, yeah, that's so true. This is why I was showing also the timeline, that basically even Hofstede, he published in the 80s, but his research dates back to 60s, 70s. So this is actually the challenge. And I just wanted to tell you about the consequences for marketing and for organizational behavior of the analysis of those dimensions. Basically, what we see among practitioners and in the literature is that the dimensions help first and foremost in better understanding of one's own culture. Of course, they are also applied to understanding customer behavior and in creating marketing strategies, but they too much concentrate on differences. And for managers who are not skilled in learning about other cultures, they really constitute quite a challenge, actually. Understanding them can be quite a challenge. And when we talk about the Arab culture, basically, what are the consequences for a workplace, for example? So the consequences will be, for example, nothing surprising to you, as a very strong culture in collectivism. It happens that people there are employed not because of their education or preparation, but because of belonging to some group or to a tribe. And there is a preference to hiring relatives, and there is explanation that it is less risky because we can trust them, and relationship will always prevail over task. And there are other consequences, but those are probably the ones that we would notice at the workplace, even during first days when we begin working. When it comes to marketing, I also would like to highlight some consequences, and also recommend to you some books. You can see them here. I will not talk more about them, but definitely worth consulting if you need to plan for any marketing advertising in the Arab world. The most important for marketing communication is definitely collectivism and power distance. Also the fact that it is high context communication culture. Those are the most important cultural dimensions. And what does it mean for our marketing strategies? And for customer behavior. For example, in cultures like the Arab culture, luxury products are very popular. There is big demand for luxury products, and those oil-rich Gulf countries are a perfect example of this, because luxury products help people to show their social status. Interestingly, those cultures also had strong belief in experts. So whenever we want to promote product, it's good to have some opinions by experts. Statistics show also that people there are less open to innovation, although there are also some contradictions, because Arab countries they are maybe not too open to innovation, but they want what is best in the world, and I will talk about it also later. In group recommendations are more important than person's own research and judgment. So it is unlikely that the customer will do a research online and compare characteristics of a product. They rather will talk to friends and family and just ask their opinion. So just some examples of common customer behavior and strategies we can have in marketing. Also, brand perception can be different in those countries. For example, global brands, especially strong global brands, may have a slightly different perception than in other countries, in other regions. They are usually considered to be prestigious and trustworthy. It is so-called country of origin effect. So it is another interesting application. Now I would like just to very briefly talk about so-called cultural savoir-vivre. I used to dismiss it and think of it as that it's important only maybe to public relations officers in companies and to tourists. But when I really started working in marketing and designing advertisement, planning for marketing strategies, I realized that actually at times it was the most important thing to know and be aware. And I just want to show you some examples that I tested them also in focus groups while doing research for my PhD. So this is a post on Instagram, IKEA Saudi Arabia, and interestingly, people love it when asked if it is interesting, if it's beautiful. Everybody agrees, like it hit 100% of it's pleasant, I like it. And people, when asked why they liked it, they said because it is showing our Arabic coffee. We love spending time and drinking Arabic coffee, but nobody was willing to engage in the post. Very few people, and this is what we as marketers want. We want people to write comments, or we want people preferably to share. And in the focus groups, nobody wanted to share. So it was like a huge discrepancy. Everybody liked it 100%, nobody wanted to share it. And I would love to ask you your guesses, but we have limited time here. But maybe is there just maybe like one quick guess? Does anybody has any idea why it's what is culturally compromising in this post that people wouldn't like to share it? And it's related to cultural savoir-vivre in the Arab states.
So we've got a proposal from Samia from Saudi Arabia that the privacy is very important.
Yes. Oh, that's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've got
Yes.
also some other guesses. Could it be the cheapness of IKEA or also combination of desk and seat?
That the first guess was actually just perfect. I discussed it with many people in different focus groups, and it's always the same consistent explanation. Home is for family. You actually don't show pictures. If you share it, it could be even interpreted as if it is your home or some of your friends' home, and it would be transgression of somebody's or your family privacy. This is a very easy one, and this actually is a good example of good understanding of and having good cultural sensitivity. Also relates to some cultural savoir-vivre and understanding of culture. And as you can see here, we have a beautiful smile, we have a beautiful girl, we have beautiful flowers. Everybody loved the picture, everybody was commenting, I love the smile. She kind of like transpires being happy and relaxed, and I love the flowers. It is also a good ad for Samsung. And the perfect thing is framing here. Yes, so we don't see the eyes of the woman, so nobody's privacy here is actually harmed. And another thing also related to something that may be considered part of cultural savoir-vivre. Also, this post scored like on top when it comes to people willing to like it, share it, comment on it. And the reason is because it refers to the Arab culture. You can see this boat is one of the typical Arabic boats, and in the Arab world, as you can read it in books and hear, it's actually very common topic to prize the culture, to talk about the culture, to discuss how you spend your time being involved in some culture related activities like picnicking, or going on a boat trip, or drinking coffee and having dates. So just knowing what stirs emotion of those people, and it's very often related to cultural savoir-vivre, can be a source of success in marketing, and it's especially in your creative strategies. Cultural etiquette can be more important that we could like intuitively think in marketing and in business, in communications. An approach that I also consider interesting. I didn't really like fully tried it. This has nothing to do with dimensions. It is called deep metaphors or culture codes or cultural imprints. I'm using the names which are promoted by a French American researcher, writer, author, Clotaire Rapaille. And the problem here is that the technique, the method is not well described, but as you may guess, the deep metaphors or cultural imprints are related to archetypes, and this methodology is similar to some used by in psychology and even psychiatry. And basically there is a group process designed, and a group of people actually through some exercises, discussions, storytelling, uncovers like symbols related to some product or some activities. And there is unfortunately the book that I found doesn't cover at all the Arab culture. It's only about the American culture. But I believe for the Arab culture it also would be very useful, and in marketing applications, especially advertising creative strategies, could be very helpful on a completely opposite side to cultural dimensions. I am also mentioning here Harvard professor who who is behind the Zaltman metaphor elicitation technique, it is very, very close to those cultural imprints. I also often encourage my trainees or companies I cooperate with, and I also used it myself, the World Values Survey. One thing that is like amazing, eye-opening to people is to actually see how distant we are as countries in our values, but also the website provides the reports for specific countries, and there are also quite a few countries covered. So when a company is planning some activities in a specific market and there is data available, it's about 160 different questions. So if analyzed well, depending on the product or the purpose of the company, there may be some interesting data available. What helped me more even than dimensions were what I call cultural models or cultural clusters or country clusters, and they appeared as our tool for us trainers and also for practitioners in cross-cultural business only in the 21st century. And they are, what is special about them, that they are designed by practitioners, by researchers, and also I hope you can hear me and you can see me, because I am experiencing here some technical problems, so hope you can see me.
Everything is okay.
Yes, okay, great, great, because it just seemed like it was blinking and I thought it disappeared. So okay, so getting back to cultural models or country clusters. They were designed by practitioners, researchers, and they are focused more on specific skills. So this is what we need actually to make our life easier, especially when we train. And not all of those approaches, but most of them actually divide countries into groups like boxes. And I tend to say that they are like a box with a label and an operating manual. So makes it easier for us when we try to explain all the intricacies of a given culture. And there are 4 approaches. I am also showing you the timeline here that I consider useful and really helpful. I will just briefly refer to them and tell you how the Arab culture is approached. So Richard Lewis, actually, he is probably among the first ones who started talking about culture, referring to specific skills we need, So why? Because he worked for over 20 years for Berlitz, and he was training managers, and based on all the surveys, 150,000 plus surveys, he was able actually to see some patterns and to create his model. But what makes it easier for us is actually that it is so much focused on communication skills. As you see, the Arabs are treated here as one group. He researched mostly United Arab Emirates, and if I remember well, also Saudi Arabia. They are in the group of multi-active, or very close to multi-active cultures. And the description is very much about approach to time, approach to communication, as you can see, attach great importance to feelings, relationships, are people-oriented, impulsive, and there is also this switching from task to task, which is related to polychronic time. Another approach, yet still generalizing about the Arab culture. But the good thing is that here we have like description of what we can expect in all communications and in most communication settings, also in business at workplace, and how we should approach those communication behaviors and how they can be interpreted. So this is what very often people ask. So how should I understand the situation so I don't misunderstand it? I don't take things personally. And another approach, also we have clusters of cultures. By Richard Gesteland, and he also was a practitioner. He basically worked negotiating in 50 plus different countries in 80s and 90s. He created also 8 country clusters. You will not be surprised that the Arabs are again one group, and unfortunately here the research also is limited to Gulf Arab countries, and there is a separate chapter dedicated to Egypt. Some important highlights here that may not be mentioned, for example, by Louis, prefer not to say no bluntly. Yes may not actually mean yes unless said forcefully. Frequent use of exaggeration, wild promises, anything really worth saying seems to be worth saying several times. Eye contact is very, very important, and so on, so forth. Very, very important is planning for deadlines. Patience is an important virtue. Here also it is highlighted to know the calendar, to be very sensitive that Ramadan is that special time when we should not put any pressure related to time deadline schedules.
Agnieszka, there is
yes.
one question and one request at the same time.
Yes.
Could you please go back to your slide multi-active cluster with Richard Lewis? Exactly.
Yes.
What words are there? Because you are showing the words on the slide multi-active cluster, and the question is whose words are those? Did Richard Lewis call it this way?
Yes, yes. So basically this is actually copied from his book, so this is actually the model he invented, and he created those three different groups, and of course cultures don't necessarily belong to one group, but maybe somewhere in between. Hope it
Thank you
answers
very
the
much.
question.
Thank you. There is also the comment in the very same minute. A lot of the comments about Arab culture could actually also apply to many African cultures.
Yes, oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. And I will say about Gurnek veins in terms of sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East is often like have very similar scores in many aspects. So true. Okay, I would like to tell you so many things, and I just need to be actually also watchful of the time. So another approach that I believe is fantastic and very helpful, very focused on specific skills for workplace, is Erin Meyer. This is among the newest, probably published in 2014. She's a researcher in SIETAR school, and you can see that she basically divides the skills that we need to be a good manager or a good team player in cross-cultural teams into 8 groups. There is research only on Saudi Arabia and only for 6 of those skills, unfortunately. Yet the model, the approach is very, very helpful. And then the last one that I would like also to present as very, very helpful. This is a different approach. Baines, in his book, actually, he presents a study based on 25 years of his business consultancy. He divided the globe into 6 regions. There is one region which actually covers all the Arab countries again, but definitely the data shows that there is most information relates to the Arab Peninsula. He looks differently at the business world. He looks at the skills that the managers possess, that the managers have, things that managers excel at. So this is also something helpful because it can show us what we can expect when we deal with business in the Arab world. I will just highlight a few of them. So for example, among the strengths, desire to be the cutting edge, positive attitude to change. 32% actually, this is a very, very high score, near to the top of the global scores. So this is like a very important strength of the Arab managers. And when we think of Dubai, for example, this perfectly matches the image of the city we can have in front of our eyes. Then also very strong 50% in commercial thinking. Yeah, and this is like the highest score globally. So then we have also a list of weaknesses. Not surprisingly, in a culture that has strong power distance, where actually this distance is very, very important. We can see that hierarchy is very important. 7% actually have a problem around inclusive two-way leadership. So and also a big problem related to strategic thinking. And here, those scores that are like the lowest, they are always close to sub-Saharan Africa. You could read more the slides, so we will make them available for you. I just maybe would like to ask like a very, very brief question. If any of those frameworks, models is among your favorite ones, or you like most for some reasons, or maybe it's new and is a discovery to you.
So there is a request from Agnieszka to share your frameworks which you are using in your work. Mm-hmm. Actually, there is also a very important piece of news that literally hit us this week, that one of the fathers of the cultural dimensions, Gerd Hofstede, passed away. Oh. And his son, Gerd Jan Hofstede, wrote a beautiful text on the main website. And yes, the interculturalists lost a very, very important figure in our field. Research hasn't been updated. Nevertheless, we know that Gerd Hofstede, Edward Hall gave us a very, very powerful tool that we can use the words for talking about differences, but also searching for synergies. So here we've got some comments. On a negative note, people or one person dislikes the Lewis triangle. One person says that she actually uses Erin Meyer a lot. Hofstede is mentioned several times. And also the Globe project, which was conducted by House, as I remember. People also say that they use Hofstede, a bit of Lewis, a bit of Meyer, so a mixture, and also Richard Lewis as well. And then we've got also one person who is actually from the Jordan, who would like to thank you, Agnieszka, for a very interesting presentation, and mentions that there is a fantastic book written by this person, When in the Arab World, an Insider's Guide to Living and Working with Arab Culture.
I know the book, and it's actually on my list of the books that I want to recommend on the last slide. So,
oh, the world is small.
Yes, I'm so happy actually, but somehow indirectly.
So this is Rana Nayem.
Yes, the book is
the name in the right way. And yeah, so the world is as small, Agnieszka. You are getting to know authors you are recommending in your presentation. So as for the presentation and as for recommendations, we've got 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, so maybe I just would like maybe to address the question about my approach. So what I learned is that basically whenever I have some kind of endeavor, maybe I just skip. This is my approach. Whenever I have any kind of endeavor, I basically first try to brainstorm what are the business settings, what are my business goals, and what will be the sources of information that I can use. So this is what I learned through working on marketing projects and working as a trainer. And I would like to show you that actually with the Arab culture, I learned that what is in the research is very important. Here you can also see which countries are covered in specific by which offer, and it's very helpful. But also there are so many things important in business activities, in business day-to-day, that, for example, I found in no research, in no books. I just somehow learned it. It was learning by doing or just reading about culture. So, for example, for any marketing activities in the Arab world, I believe it is so important to understand the approach, the attitude Arabs have to their language. It is so different than we in the European countries have to our languages. And just to make it short, just Arabic is pleasant for your eyes, ears, and your soul. And I think this gives us a bit of understanding how important is the language. And in communication, we knowing that, we can really make great use of this knowledge. Also, you will not learn from research, from dimensions, things like national pride and how proud Arabs are of their culture, tradition, history. It is mentioned. You will probably not learn about how important cosmetics and perfumes are in that culture. Yes, so it is also something. This is just an example of those little things that you need to, depending on your business category, depending on what you want to do. It's really good to have like a broad scope of sources you will be getting your information from about the culture. I would like to highlight, for example, that Arab countries may not have their own brands, but cosmetics and perfumes are actually their specialty, and this is the area they managed to create some global brands. So this is also amazing. Something also you will not prepare just by studying about cross-cultural or cultural intelligence, is that in some of those countries you basically may not even work with Arabs most of the time, because there are so many minorities. And also I believe it is one of the questions that I hardly ever find like good answer. How do we approach this kind of cultures where there are so many minorities, so many immigrants who just come and go there? They are in those countries temporary, and there are so many different dynamics between different groups. I could tell you that my experience was that I had on my team 4 or 5 nationalities, but Arabs. Yes, so it was completely different experience. Also, things you may not learn from just research is attitude, mental attitude, like fatalism, which also is very important for customer behavior. And that there are so many ambivalences, so many things that actually may seem to be contradictory in the Arab culture. And
Agnieszka, may I ask you to show the former slide, please? The Inshallah slide. Keep calm and say Inshallah. It's so interesting that it's really a shame that we need to wrap up at this point. 1 hour is over. You said from the very beginning that you've got still much more to share, and you are happy to upload your presentation, and everybody is very welcome to have a look and to use this knowledge you are sharing with us. Not only knowledge, but also wisdom, because you are sharing also fantastic stories. And there are comments that, yeah, people are looking forward to more. So you are also, as you see, very, very welcome to share still more experiences. I'm really sorry for jumping in. This is our format, and it's just 1 hour. Great presentation. Many people are thanking you so much. So please also show the book of Rana. If
yes,
you could,
here.
could do it, yes. So that
highlighted.
Oh, it's highlighted. That's perfect. And yes, we've got also wonderful thank you, not only in English, but also shukran. So in the Arabic language. So many, many shukrans at this point. And at this point, Agnieszka asked me from the very beginning to say that it was her first webinar, and Agnieszka, you did a fantastic job. You can be very, very happy for sharing so much within this really, really limited time period.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being of great help to me, and I really appreciate that so many people wanted to spend that hour with us, and that you have been so much involved, and we have been dialoguing all the time. I am also very, very happy that that SIETAR actually allows us for those interactions, and provides for the platform for sharing and getting in touch, even from people whom we kind of like know from their books.
Yes, it's fantastic networking as well. So, and as for networking, we would like to thank you on behalf of SIETAR Europa for joining tonight, today, or wherever you are right now, and also joining us in March. On the 19th of March, we've got another webinar from cultural learning to cultural insights. So also a very, very intriguing title. And thank you very, very cordially for keeping joining us. There are people who are joining almost every single webinar, which is fantastic. It means that we have also a nice choice of very diverse themes. Agnieszka, thank you for presenting, for fantastic content, for your patience. You are talking about the Arabic countries and Oman, particularly with lots of patience, lots of love. And I would be also very, very interested how people perceive all these pieces of information. I guess this is for another time.
Yes.
So
hopefully there will be more research on the Arab countries, because definitely I just wanted to highlight that we need it. We need more research, updated research. It's not covered well enough in the publications available. So hopefully we can also contribute to that.
Yeah. So this is the invitation to all the interculturalists to start researching much, much more in this corner of the world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Good night.